right, let's go on a little bit of an adventure. You wouldn't believe what I found in the middle of the street today. I don't know if I'm allowed to wear it, if it's part of a uniform or if it's just marketing. What I found right in the middle of the street. Huh? I would have been happy to have actually worked with them if they were legit. But I don't know if they're any more legit than Houston. Are they? Huh? Now, do I have to return this hat? There's no tag in here saying put in the nearest mailbox so it can be returned to the water utilities department so that the appropriate person can get their uniform back. How much you gotta pay for this hat? Can I keep it? Do I gotta turn it in? Am I impersonating a water utilities district, water utilities department official? Huh? I'm not gonna wear the hat. I got it. It's right there in the middle of the street. On my way to train this morning. But the problem is, your bond is disgusting. It's horrible. I believe it was intentionally orchestrated to be that way. And now that there's the lawsuit in Flint, Michigan, I'm sure that that impacts Dallas because Dallas was pairing itself with Michigan during the bond issue at the same time, based on Detroit, right? Sure was. So water up there is going to have an impact on water down here. And water in Dallas is going to have an impact on the fact that all of last year, the suburban area to the north of Dallas was supposed to be involved in a year-long process whereby the people in the community were going to be dealing with rates associated with water distribution as a process they had already gone through, an administrative process in the state of Texas they had already gone through. And with the COVID, what did they get to do? They didn't get to meet in public to have the discussions as part of what was planned all year last year. And this is after 3 other bonds had been set up in this area before Dallas issued its during COVID. Just so you know, somebody paid attention, which means they already had bonds and they already had terms and they already had expectations and obligations on what they were going to do with those bonds as part of capital improvement projects and public works in their own districts and areas before Dallas did what? I made a video. I'm looking at it right now. June 10th, 2020. Public notice regarding Dallas municipal bond issue. June 10th, 2020. Now, this bond closed on June 7th, right? And there was a period of time when some things were being processed. This would have been 3 days after that original Dallas bond closed, right? So there's that. But before we get to that, I just want to review that I also have another message under audit. And I'm going to listen to it right now. Hold on a second. It's only 29 seconds. Listen.
You are damned right. I would be getting information on the last 72 hours, especially around that time when somebody, made that call. Anybody that's been entered in for a alleged mental health crisis in the last 72 hours, and anybody that's alleged to have a mental health crisis tomorrow and for the 72 hours after that. And I'd also do it in every major city with an emergency mental health crisis unit in the state of Texas.
Why would I do that? If that was something that I had a capacity to do, why would I do that? I don't know. Maybe it's something here. This is kind of long. Let's listen. Let's see what was up to that day.
It's 12:38 p.m. on June 10th, 2020. On Monday, June 8th, there was a closing of a issuance for a bond for the City of Dallas Waterworks and Sewer System Revenue Refunding Bonds, Taxable Series 2020D. And on Tuesday, June 9th, there was a closing for a City of Dallas, Texas Waterworks and Sewer System Revenue Refunding Bonds, Series 2020C. In the bond prospectus, it begins the introduction to the bond, discussing infectious disease outbreak, COVID-19. It starts by giving a sort of history of the quote pandemic end quote that says that identifies January 31st, 2020 as being connected to an announcement by the Secretary of the United States Health and Human Services Department It mentions March 13th, 2020, the governor of Texas declared a state of disaster for all counties in Texas in response to the pandemic. And it also says the pandemic has negatively affected travel, commerce, and financial markets globally and is widely expected to continue to negatively affect economic output worldwide and within the city. It then goes on to say in the plan of financing connected to this bond issue that the purpose is that proceeds from the sale of the Series 2020C bonds, together with other available systems funds, if necessary, will be used to refund certain outstanding bonds of the city and refund outstanding commercial paper notes. According to the prospectus, the amounts of the bonds are $296,855,000 for the Series 2020C and $364,240,000 for the Series 2020D.
364.24. That's pretty much what I saw this morning. Isn't it? It sure is. 364.24. All right. See what's next.
Now, I have been trying for several years to bring attention to my concerns around how municipal bond issues are oftentimes issued fraudulently and engage criminal activities in the processes leading up to their issuance. I'm not going to go into too many details, but I'm going to say that insofar as I understand these specific bonds that would have been available and on the market, so to speak, and are set to settle, I believe the term they use is the settlement date is not yet and is in the first week of July. It is important to understand that I believe that the city of Dallas has intentionally engaged in fraudulent activity in order to mischaracterize the efforts that they would intend to justify financing connected to these municipal bonds. Number one, in May of 2018, the state of Texas and various other entities within the state of Texas, as well on the federal level, and in the months thereafter, were informed that I personally was trafficked to Dallas as part of a strategy that involved disabuse of my efforts to seek redress for crimes that had been committed against me and to which I had been witness, because there was a $302.4 million municipal bond for Alice and Fort Worth that was alleged to have been issued that day. I contacted various entities within the state of Texas, and just within the state of Texas had the 2 report numbers issued in consideration of that bond. To this day, I have received absolutely no response to those bonds, and I have received no assistance with trying to report on other crimes that I have witnessed while I have been continuously trafficked here locally. Please note that
I think I've probably lost maybe 5-10 pounds since I started this. At least 5 pounds. Let's put it that way. And my face looks very different now than it did then. The jowls, the sunken eyes. It even looks like my cheekbones have changed. That's important.
Among many other things, the state of Texas requires by law that every member of the police department and everybody in a law enforcement role receive training, at least 2 hours of training on counter trafficking training, how to address acts of trafficking, and that they are required to receive certification that they have attended this training. I have absolutely no evidence in more than 3 years of being in the state of Texas that the police force, that the Department of Public Safety, or that any city or county administrator, including those involved with healthcare or with provision of services to people involved in domestic violence shelters or homeless shelters, have even received that training, because there's no evidence they are even conscious of what trafficking is, much less that they are willing or capable of complying with the terms of certification for having been trained in how to address acts of trafficking. Secondly, there have been two major things that have been occurring in the last week and a half to a month that have been very.
Now, around the time this was happening, I didn't know at the time, but the Supreme Court of Texas was evaluating cases connected to allegations of misconduct by police in Houston. Specifically, one of the cases I read was about a police officer abusing his time on the clock, misreporting that he was doing things associated with his official job functions, while the cell phone tower records reflected that he was in areas of the city that were not a part of what would be considered actual performance of his duties. I bring this up because I didn't see anything about refusal to demonstrate compliance with mandated certification around considerations of human trafficking. And in that case, the concern wasn't even about misuse of the cell phone while on the job. It was about the cell phone being able to track where he was located, which wasn't in a specified and designated area, to justify him claiming it as time on the clock. Now, if you're talking about pension obligation and requiring people in the city and our assets to be used as collateral on bond obligation associated with the pensions of people in law enforcement, do you not think that the character of the obligation should reflect their competence in addressing acts of trafficking as they are mandated to do by virtue of the fact they are required to have certification, in the fact that they've been trained to do so? If they have this certification and there is payment for the curriculum associated with that certification, and they're issued certificates that are allowed to be used in an inventory of the human capital that they have as a part of the force, and or is part of a identification of qualifications one must have in order to be a law enforcement officer, and they fail to demonstrate competence in that area, not only in the city of Houston, but also in other cities. And in the course of being in a non-compliance with that, there's also demonstration of coordination of abuse of various kinds of law enforcement duties within Houston that contributed to the murder of a police officer in another city, likewise required to be certified in how to address acts of human trafficking. Do you not think this is going to reflect on the character of your bond and every other bond that is issued on past assessments of financing and financial ability of the city that have not accounted appropriately for non-compliance and lack of competence in demonstration of work duties by people, presumably, that these bonds are going to fund?
Very concerning to me. At the beginning of March, right around the time that the announcement was coming in concerning the closing down of public facilities, ostensibly because of a state of emergency, the public library in downtown Dallas, which I understand also has bonds associated with it, had public toilets, public portable toilets that were placed in the back and the front of the hotel on either side where the entrances to, I just said hotel, to the library, where the entrances to and the exits from the library would be. These were disabled toilets that were the full size to be able to use, and they were less than 20 feet, less than actually 20 feet from the actual door, the actual opening and closing electronic door. There is nothing at all from a public health standpoint in any way, shape, or form that justifies having a portable toilet within 20 feet of the front door of a public library. Even there's nothing. In the entire time I've been here, there has never been a portable toilet on site at the public library, except during the week that the announcement was made about a state of emergency. The only justification or thing that I can understand is that in these situations of recurrent proxy scenarios that and derivative engagements that are actually in many ways not only public safety and public health concerns, but I believe highly illegal on other levels. The only thing that makes sense about this is that in 2018, around the time that municipal bond was issued through Bank of America, my understanding is it was through Bank of America, that they moved the Department of Vital Records from Dallas, in Dallas, from the City Hall, which is across the street, to the public library. So inside the library on the first floor is where all of the vital records would be accessible. It's where you go to apply for your birth certificate or your marriage certificate, or to get information on death certificates. And there's also a very substantial genealogical library in that specific library. And I honestly believe that they literally put portable toilets on both sides of the library as part of some sort of simulation that had nothing to do with public health. And that they left it there. Those public toilets were left there not only for the last remaining days that the library was open before it closed down. I believe the library closed down 3 or 4 days after the announcement of the state of emergency, but for up to a week afterward. And then they were gone. So even from a standpoint of having to address the homeless problem, because a lot of homeless do congregate there, there's absolutely no sense to having portable toilets outside the entrances to the library.
It's also important to know that the libraries still aren't open. You go to libraries in other areas, they're open. Libraries, and this might be terms about whether or not you can use the books at certain points in time, or whether you need somebody to get them. You got to use the mask, got to social distance. Using the computers, only certain computers might be open. But Dallas, you got to centralize everything through the downtown library, right? And or you might be able to pick them up at the various districts, right? But you go downtown, you're not allowed in the library. And they got a little setup right outside where they used to, right in front of where they used to have that toilet. Literally, you got to pick up your books right in front of where they used to have that toilet. Every time I've tried to pick up a book or order a book from there, I have to wait for some period of time. You call them, you got to schedule a time to pick up. You got to wait at least 24 hours, except one day. One day, for some reason, she made sure to let me know she was using a laptop that day. Just so happened to be the same day that they were talking about Nancy Pelosi's laptop getting stolen. But that day she helped. She was quick. She made sure I got it that day. And it was horrible. Every time you set up an appointment to pick up a book, they've bundled some deal onto it. And it is a horrible deal. They literally are hedging murders on you being able to get a damn library book. And they're completely racially typecasting what you do with your library searches. It's not just with the search, which, that's been the whole thing since I've been here. The database for the library in Dallas is called Polaris. Polaris. Every fucking time you get a library book, they're setting up a nuclear hedge. They know it. Somebody knows it. So you go to get that library book, and it's hellfire all the way back. Every time you get the library book, almost every time I've gotten a library book from Dallas, I end up crying. I'm not lying. Or I'm coming back and I'm trying to process through all of the toxic crap they put onto the library book. Last time it was so significant, I couldn't even take the library book back here with me. I couldn't transport the library book into this area and bring it into my house, because that's how toxic what they set up on it was. Did they use that library book to help get a kickback associated with the murder of those 2 judges in Afghanistan? I'm absolutely serious.
Secondly, I have been going and riding my bike around the city, and they have been engaged in substantial projects connected to some sort of repair of the sewer system in various areas in downtown or next to downtown Dallas. And it is alarming to me that, just for instance, and I'm going to have to mention it because it's this egregious, this past Saturday there was some sort of simulation involving an aircraft in the city. That is one thing. But the other thing about that is that they had announced that there was over 80 deaths that happened on Saturday alone. 80 people in the state of Texas died on Saturday alone. And yet during this time frame, they've got construction crews that are or maintenance crews out on the street digging up the subterranean tunnel networks, and the smell of raw sewage was like permeating the area for up to a block or 2 blocks in a particular area of downtown that was under the interstate. There, the interstate was above, and then they were doing something under the interstate. There's something specific about the jurisdiction of areas that are under the bridges, and that is part of a political issue that was brought up in the municipal campaigns of 2017 and then immediately after. But that wasn't even in Dallas. That was in another jurisdiction. My concern is that these people that are engaging with raw sewage right now are wearing bandanas. They're not, if there is actually a public health outbreak that is an airborne disease that is killing people, why are they doing construction projects during a lockdown, exposing people to raw sewage, wearing nothing more than a bandana? And by the way, this isn't even a bandana that would be consistently distributed by the employer. This is a personal handkerchief put over the face for more of, I believe, an aesthetic effect, a sort of sense of association symbolically, than anything having to do with worker safety. I believe this is absolutely sabotage, and this is an absolute bad faith effort to compensate for or to intentionally create defaults on past bond issues, with the understanding that the manipulators in Texas will just leverage whatever is actually going on in these bad faith efforts to acquire these bonds. These bonds cannot be issued. They've obviously made a farce of the situation at this point of time, but to what end?
So, around this happened, there had already been that situation where the guys in Dallas arrested that Mexican police chief. Remember? It was on December 12th of 2019, Lady Day. The day that is honoring the Lady of Guadalupe. They arrest the Mexican police chief. I'm just saying, right? And recently, there was a release of a Mexican official returned to Mexico. Mexico got some documents. They put them online. You look through that, almost every guy I saw there was wearing a red bandana, a regular red handkerchief, like he was a bandito. Now, I'm sure they didn't have any cognizability at all about what it meant to be signifying red in Dallas, right? I'm just saying, right? My understanding is Dallas has had kind of a problem or an issue with these kinds of affairs in the past. You might know about it in certain neighborhoods more than others. At least that's some of the stuff that was reported in certain elements of the media. You can find a couple of those pages, You may not want to, but you can find them talking to each other, right? Around, December 2019, they started doing these things. They started sending out these solicitations, allegedly from AS&T, talking about recertification. The problem is, there's all this stuff when you would try to sign up. You didn't have to verify or authenticate. They were offering these deals, and they were being tiered to another tier. It was as if they had one level, and then they had another level. And the understanding was, yeah, you were at this level. You tested at this level. You were involved initially at this level. But you haven't been able to get a job. You didn't get your experience hours in. You got busted down. There was facilities damage. You need to reapply, and you need to understand standards have changed. That's what you need to recertify at. And yeah, you're going to have to help some of those people that don't have legal documents. This was in December of 2019. And I said, I can't do that. Every single damn time I tried to tear anything to the ASNT, there was an implication that I was going to agree to work with people and assist people who did not have legal documentation to work in the United States in acquiring access to certifications regarding ASNT standards, including ones having to do with radiography and or radiographic film interpretation. Now, I said I wasn't going to do that. I held off. I even contacted them. I had some conversations over the phone. And at first, it seemed like people were actually getting it. And then all of a sudden, July comes around last year. What did they do? They got their little sidecar standards. And it's part of this, keep her off the grid. Let her do the remote work. Nobody's going to pay her. But the problem is, who is end up getting paid? Because people are getting more thuggish by the day. Nobody knows how to communicate. And when you go and you see even guys that work with people wear this hat, you know what they do? He says something while she goes and gets in the fucking truck and gets on her cell phone, hooking up a fucking deal. And I just got the receipt today. Last time I was on my bike down by that level, they were doing a construction project. They told me what it was. I won't tell it right now. I knew damn well she was setting up a fucking deal right around the time I made this video. What are you doing today, Dallas? You need to peg me for whatever she set up on her cell phone behind his back. He knew what she was doing. And I had to work the tax the rest of the day, and it was horrible. Just like I had to work the tax today. And you guys got some case going that's completely out of your jurisdiction and completely out of your level. You understand? I know you busted me down here and I'm supposed to be playing like I'm clandestino, helping with some people's revolution. That's not what it is. You let fucking narcos in the wrong fucking places. They're sabotaging these jobs. They're sabotaging these public works. There might be good people that have skills and that with a little time on the job would actually have the experience to do a good job. I'm one of those people. But I'm a citizen of the United States, and the entire fucking time I've been down here. You've got this race racket. I gotta pay off the black guy, and then once I pay off the black guy, I gotta help some guy that's not documented get legit. And then what happens to my ass? Because ultimately, I'm their 20 fucking 4, and they need me to hook up the fucking HUD deal, and then they bounce me next anyway. This is the fucking racket they've been playing the whole fucking time. What you did this morning was completely unacceptable. And if you got somebody that thinks that they're going to moonlight, like they're going to give you State Department cover, we're already talking treason, guys. You need to fucking cut your losses. And if you're on the fucking inside and you're hooking up a little game by leaving your fucking uniform in the street, it was different. When I was in Houston and I heard those firefighters talking about what happened at Harvey, I took that seriously. You all tried to bust me down to somebody that's fucking undocumented trying to do what? What do you really expect me to do? I go into your fucking little immigrant bash fucking playtime. What do you really expect me to fucking hook up with you? Huh? What do you really expect? Are you expecting me to get some fucking mamacitas and farm them out to your fucking old boys? It's gone on long enough, guys. You guys need to fucking come out. Stop this bullshit about how you're not gonna fucking disclose, because what it looks like is not a goddamn fucking one of you are qualified to get paid.